Maya Corbic, CPA, CA, is a mom and the author of a kid's book, From Piggy Banks to Stocks, The Ultimate Guide for a Young Investor. She's the founder of the Wealthy Kids Investment Club, where she helps parents teach their kids about money, even if no one taught the parents about personal finance when they were growing up. Maya's popular Instagram account has almost 200,000 followers and inspires parents to raise financially independent kids. Maya, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracy.
It is so fun to talk to you. I know that getting wealthy is a dream that many people have, and I know that there are lots of people who aren't motivated to just sit on a big pile of money. But we could all use a little bit of wealth that would allow us to breathe easier and afford some extra things in our lives, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, all that is nice.
Well, because I think that people hear the word wealth or get wealthy and they think, oh, I don't need to be super rich. This doesn't apply to me. But that's not true, is it?
Oh, absolutely not. No. And it's really interesting that you said that because during some of my workshops that I did in schools, sometimes I will have kids that tell me that they don't want to be rich. And when I ask why, sometimes there are these deeply seated money mindset ideas that they picked up from their parents. And, sometimes people think that if they're rich, they're greedy or there's not enough for everybody. But I can assure you there is enough wealth for all of us. And being wealthy is not a bad thing. It can actually, just as you said, help us breathe a little bit easier, go on that vacation and get some rest and recovery time so we can be a better parent for our kids and, better for the rest of our family.
Well, I always say money doesn't buy happiness, but it buys choices. It buys choices in life. I can choose to go on a vacation or not. I can choose to buy a new pair of shoes when I want them. And having those choices is really nice.
Oh, absolutely. And then, for people who may feel that, extra money is, having extra money makes them feel greedy, you have a choice. You can give some of that money to your favorite charity or help people that you really, really care about. So absolutely. Having that money gives you choices.
Okay, but if I am not rich, if I didn't learn how to accumulate money, how am I going to teach my kids to get wealthy?
Yeah, so that's a common question that I get. So, what I like to tell moms that usually ask that question is, you know what, you can learn how to become money smart, and as you are learning, you can be teaching your child. The most important thing to remember is that you know more than your child. So. Yes, maybe you are still lacking some information about how to be an investor or how to fully pay off your debt. But you do know the difference between needs and wants, and that saving is important. So, those are some basic concepts that you can start teaching your child. And as you learn more, you can teach them even more.
Yeah, we're always learning. So I don't think it really matters where we start with this investing journey, with this getting wealthy journey. If we're learning, it's a great time to teach our kids as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I want to start with something that I think all parents want to talk about, which is an allowance. Do I give my kids an allowance? How do I have them earn the allowance? How does this impact how I can teach my kids about money?
Yeah, so allowance is a very hot topic. It's the one that I have actually seen parents argue over. The thing is that, I have been doing this for over a decade, and I can tell you that there is no one right way to teach allowance. There are actually four different allowance methods, and I'm going to go through them in a moment. But before I start talking about them, I just want to clarify that allowance is not a gift. Okay. And I want that to sit, on top of mind for some parents because allowance is actually a tool that we use to teach money management. So a lot of times people think that, if we're given money, that's a gift. But in this case, the money is given so that the child can use it and practice money management skills. So, and the idea behind the allowance is that we want to give it to the kids when they're little, when the dollar values are not very high and stakes are not very high. So if they make any mistakes, it's not a big deal. they're supposed to learn from those mistakes, and those mistakes are good. We want them to learn now rather than, when they graduate from college, they have a six-figure salary and then make some really costly mistakes. So, in terms of the allowance, the first allowance method is allowance being tied to chores. This is the obvious one. If the child doesn't do chores, they don't get paid. Parents who support this allowance method believe that, or actually they want to teach their child that money doesn't grow on trees. You have to work hard to earn that money. And so these kids have allowance tied to chores. The second allowance method is not tied to chores at all. These parents actually give a certain amount of money to their child every week or every 2 weeks. And they believe that a child should be doing chores as a contributing member of the household. And they also believe that no one is going to pay that child to empty out garbage or, make their bed one day when they become an adult. So the idea is that the child should do that regardless, but they get a certain amount of money each week to practice managing that money. And if the child, let's say, does something that is inappropriate or maybe doesn't do the chores, what happens is that these parents will take away other things like screen time, play dates, etc. The third allowance method is the mixture of the first two. So these parents give a certain amount of money once a week for money management, but the kids had the opportunity to earn extra money by doing the chores that parents would maybe pay someone else to do, like washing the car, or I used to get my kids to shred my confidential documents instead of taking them to Staples for shredding. That method combines the first two. And then, of course, there is the last one, which is not giving allowance at all. And some parents are really strong supporters of this allowance method. And, if that is you, that is okay. I, again, don't think that there is a right way to approach this. You choose the allowance method that works best for you. But if you choose not to give your child allowance, then you really have to set the best possible example because they really learn by observing how you manage your money. And one thing I would suggest for parents who choose not to give allowance is to still try to find opportunities where you can give your child a chance to manage money, like involving them with their birthday budget or budget for back to school shopping and so on. So there is no right way in terms of allowance. You pick the one that works for you. And if that one doesn't work, pick a different one.
What I really like about the concept of allowance is giving the children that opportunity, like you said, to learn and make mistakes when the amount of money at stake is very low. You have a small child who wants a toy and then wants another toy and has to learn about choices, about delayed gratification, waiting until you have enough money saved to buy the toy you want. I love those concepts for kids to be learning.
Absolutely, yes. And sometimes it's really hard to let our kids make their own mistakes. I know I'm guilty of that when my kids were little and we used to give allowance. And they would do the proper thing. They would save a portion of it and put it into investing. They would put aside a little bit of money for donations, and then whatever was left was theirs to spend. And I remember kind of meddling in those decisions. And my daughter one time said to me, "Mom, you're making me feel really guilty about this." And then I realized, you know what? I just need to step back and let them make their own decisions. And once I started doing that, I would actually later on gently follow up and say, "Hey, how did that work out for you?" And my kids knew when they made a mistake and when a purchase didn't really turn out to be a good one. And they really learn how to be more savvy with their money.
I think that we're going to have women listening to this who are single moms, who are maybe don't have a lot of financial resources and are saying to themselves, I don't even have extra money to offer my kids an allowance. Is there a way to manage that?
That is actually an excellent question. Usually I get that question. And the thing is that you're actually paying your child already. And what I mean by that is you need to reflect upon all the things that you have paid for your child. So, what I mean by that is you can just simply look at your credit card or bank statement and see, identify in the last month, like when did you buy candy for your child? When did you give them money, if you have a teenager, money for some coffees, or when did you give them money to go to the movies? All of those things are purchases that you can transfer from you onto them. So instead of you deciding to pay for them and how much to pay, they can be the ones deciding whether or not they want to purchase that. So their decision making process also changes when that decision is shifted from you onto them. So whatever amount of money you gave them, let's say in the past month, or you paid for directly, now you can actually give that money as the allowance to the child, and the child would be the one responsible for making decisions as to how to spend that money. And trust me, so many kids make very different decisions than when they're asking us parents to pay for them.
Sure, I could imagine also you might be going shopping for school supplies with your child, which you need to get. You could set a budget for that and have your child make some of the choices in what is being purchased. Would you rather have this item or that item? And so you're not spending any extra money, but you're giving that opportunity for them to be involved in the spending choices.
Oh, absolutely. And another example of back to school shopping that, we can do as parents is something that I've done with my daughter just in September. I actually gave her a budget, you know, and I purposefully sometimes make the budget a little bit tighter because luckily we're well off. We've, invested our money over a long period of time. So I can afford to give her a bigger budget, but sometimes I purposefully make it lower just so that she can learn budgeting. And so I asked her, I said, okay, make your list what you need for this school year. So she did. And then I said, okay, now that you have this list, go back and identify what on this list is absolute need and what are the wants. And so she literally had this list divided into two categories. And on the wants list were AUKs. And I said, okay, so here's the thing. I gave her $300. I said, this is for you. And I kind of knew that I was going to cover all the needs, definitely not the wants. And I said, for the wants, you can earn that money. And then because, we had a special occasion coming up and I knew that I was going to, for that special occasion that we were having, I knew she was going to actually get some money from me, from the grandparents. And I said, that money that you get, you should probably plan to use that towards your UGs. And then you can also think about how you can earn money. So she actually works for me. She edits my investment videos. And so sometimes she makes money that way. But she ended up purchasing her own UGs. It took her a couple of months to save up for them, and she did it.
Okay, so we want to teach our kids how to get wealthy. There's got to be a secret to this, right?
A secret? Well, I think the biggest secret when it comes to becoming wealthy is investing. Uh, and it sounds simple, but a lot of times, especially in the workshops that I do, when I ask parents, to reflect upon their childhood and growing up, I usually ask them, hey, did anybody tell you to save money? Like, did anybody teach you anything about money? And most people say no. But even if people were not taught anything about money, usually somebody along the way told them to save their money. So people knew saving is important. But then I asked another question, how many people told you to invest your money? And many of them say they haven't really heard anybody telling them to invest. And the reason why I asked that question is because we cannot save our way to wealth. On my Instagram account, I do a lot of these like little teaching posts, and I actually show really quickly, how this financial literacy works. So for example, I have this post that actually shows, two little girls, and one of them is saving $10,000 for next 10, or I think it's maybe even 40 years, and another one invested that money. The one obviously that invested her money more than I think tripled or quadrupled depending on what you invest in. So the thing is that we really cannot increase our wealth and become wealthy just by saving. We need to learn how to invest. And actually, investing is quite simple, even though a lot of people are very intimidated by it.
Okay, so you teach kids how to do this. How do you teach them how to invest? Because I know as growing up as a kid, I was taught to save. I didn't even know there was such a thing as investing.
Yeah, same with me. I mean, I'm an immigrant, so I grew up in a communist country and they didn't have a stock market. So my parents didn't know anything about investing, and neither did I growing up. But I realized that very quickly that was the key to becoming wealthy. So I actually taught myself so that I could teach my own kids. And so now my kids have these investment portfolios that I could have only dreamed of having when I was their age. And I know that they're going to be set for life. But of course, part of it is also educating them. So the first step is really helping our kids understand that instead of just being a consumer, they could be owners. And what I mean is that, I'm holding my iPhone here, but instead of just being consumer of Apple products, we could be owners of Apple. And so that's a big realization, and kids really like that because there are all these companies that they know and understand, and they would love to be owners of these companies. And what I teach actually is a really simple way of investing. I do teach as well, investing in individual companies, but I teach an easier, I call it more like lazy way of investing, which is investing in ETFs and index funds. And it's kind of like set it and forget it method. It's very boring. It's kind of like watching the paint dry, but it is perfect for anyone who's a long-term investor. And most of us are long-term investors because we want to invest for our retirement, for our kids' college, or maybe our kids' first home. And so anybody can learn how to do this. It is not difficult. And once people learn it, they're like, "Oh, why didn't anybody tell me this earlier?"
I'm going to argue with you and say it is not boring to invest in ETFs and index funds because that's what I do with most of my money. And I love every day logging in, seeing, is it worth more? Is it worth less? What did some of the different funds do versus the others? I wonder why. I think it's super interesting.
Yeah, so when I say it's boring, it's because a lot of times people come to me and they're like, "Oh, how do I teach my child to trade stocks?" So I just want to clarify for moms or parents who are actually listening to this. Trading is very different from long-term investing. Those are two different things. So when I'm talking about trading, I would like you to think about all those movies like The Wolf of the Wall Street, and those guys that are just like looking at their computers and it's high stress and they're trading stocks and it's like, "Oh my God, like stress to the roof." That's not what investing is. Or investing, long-term investing that I teach. Uh, and you can actually invest and literally like figure out what your portfolio should look like, align it with your goals, and know that you're going to meet those goals as long as you are consistent and leave that money sitting in there working for you in your investment account. That is very different from this like high stress, uh, adrenaline driven. I always call it like a gambling mentality too, because I used to know
Right.
someone who was a day trader, and he made like $30,000 in one day, but he also lost $50,000 of his parents' money in one day. So, when people are scared of investing, I think they're scared of trading, not long-term
Yes.
investing.
And you can start with a tiny bit of money, right? You don't have to have 100 or 1,000 or $10,000 to start investing. You can invest with a really small amount of money, right?
Absolutely, yes. So the beautiful thing, especially with index funds and ETFs, is that now a lot of these brokerages offer fractional share investing. So with ETFs, you can invest into a fraction of that ETF. So let's say if an ETF costs $200 or $300 per that share, if you don't want to invest that much, you can invest just $50.
That's so awesome. Okay, I want to know how money mindset impacts all of this because so many people in the finance world talk about money mindset, money mindset. And I love getting the different perspectives on what that really means and how it really comes into play.
Yeah, so I honestly thought, I'm a CPA, so I thought that this money mindset thing that he was talking about was nonsense until I actually started diving in deeper and reading a lot of books. And money mindset is really the foundation of financial literacy, in my opinion. It's everything that we grew up with on our way to adulthood, like that we heard about money. I like to actually tell parents to think of three questions or answer three questions. So the first one is, what did you hear about money when you were growing up? Or even investing, like you can replace the word money with investing, or replace it with the word budgeting or with the word debt. So what did I hear about money, debt, investing? What did I see with regards to money when I was growing up? And did any emotional incidents occur that involve money or investing or whatever? And your answers will uh, surprise you, because those are the things that determine how you deal with money right now. So a lot of times in my workshops, I ask parents, like, what did you hear about investing? What did you see with regards to investing? And a lot of times people say nothing. My parents were not investors. And then did any emotional incidents occur with regards to investing? And they'll be like, oh yeah, I heard my uncle invested so much money in this company and he lost it all. And my uncle and aunt were forced to sell their house and it was emotionally distressing. And I just remember that because I love my cousins and they were not homeless, but they had to downsize and whatever. So it's these emotional things that make us believe that, okay, well, investing is very risky. I have no inclination to learn it or to invest my money. And then what ends up happening is that inadvertently we pass that on to our children. So our kids, because we will never learn how to invest, we will never teach that to our kids. And they don't teach this in school. So our kids will never learn how to invest. They will never learn how to grow their wealth.
I can see why it's so important to really be able to identify that mindset that you have, kind of figure out where it came from so that you can move past it and start to learn those things and teach them to your children.
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay. How can we start investing small and really grow that?
Oh, yeah. So that's a fantastic question. So we really don't need to invest a lot. Even just, for example, I'll just use this because a lot of times parents ask me, how can they start investing for their kids? So let's say your child is just born. If you start investing just $10 per week, we're talking one Starbucks venti latte. That money, and you do that consistently for the next 18 years, right? Until your child becomes an adult. And if you leave that money sitting in the account and your child doesn't even contribute any more money to it, but that money stays in there until your child is 65, your child can be a millionaire. That money will compound and grow over time.
So just $10 a week invested every week from the time they're born until the time they turn 18. Leave the money alone, but have it invested smartly. That person can retire as a millionaire.
Yes, that's
without
all
adding
it
anything
takes.
extra. That
Anything
is so
extra,
mind-blowing.
yeah. And if the child, if you teach your child how to invest and they continue adding more money to it, when as soon as they get their first part-time job or regular job, that money can grow even more. And it's so simple, but most people don't do it because nobody tells them about this, right?
Right. Okay, tell me a little bit more about your program that you have to teach kids to
Well,
invest
thank
and
you
get
so much for
wealthy.
mentioning that. Yeah, so the program that I have, it's called Wealthy Kids Investment Club. It is a family membership program where we teach families how to successfully invest. So we have a lot of parent investors who are newbies, never invested, scared of investing, and we break it down for them. We have challenges, like we're going through one right now. It's called 4-week challenge to open up your first brokerage account and invest your first money for your child. It could be that you invest $10, $50, or 100, whatever works for you. And then there are these short lessons that are on demand that you can, learn from how to invest in ETFs and index funds, which are my favorite investment vehicles. And, we have support. We have a Facebook group. So if it's okay, I'd just like to tell them where they can find it.
Yes, of
Yeah,
course.
so they can find it at www.wealthykids.club. So it's not .com, it's .club, CLUB.
And we are certainly going to link that in the show notes. I wish I had something like that when I was a kid. The challenges, kind of making it a bit of a game, would have been so wonderful for me. I would have eaten that up. I would have been in there seeing how many lessons I could get done.
Yes, so we give out prizes to encourage everybody to participate. We give out gift cards and copies of my book. So it's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Tell us about the free cheat sheet that you have, because I know that that is a really valuable place to start if moms are thinking about getting their kids invested.
Yeah, that is a perfect place to start. The cheat sheet is available to anyone listening, and it actually lists out 4 easy steps on how I invest successfully with my kids, and it explains what ETFs and index funds are and how you can get started investing in those.
What a great place to get started. We'll link that in the show notes as well. Maya, thank you. So much information packed into so little time today. It was great having you.
Thank you so much, Tracy.